Hello everyone out there and welcome to Ruby's Classic Cooking. Today I'm going to tackle the bread machine. You remember the bread machine that you got for Christmas from somebody that's still sitting in that box in the corner that you've never gotten out because what the heck am I going to do with this giant thing anyway, right? You can do fabulous things. And today in my kitchen I'm going to make a batch of rolls that are to die for, everybody tells me. And you know what? They're going to cost me a whole $1.70 for the ingredients. Now, maybe you'd like to have gorgeous rolls from the bakery. That will take you 3 hours and 5 minutes of your time, a absolute minimum of effort. If you have one of these babies, kick it around in your kitchen somewhere, still in the box. You know what? I bought this one at a charity auction, online auction. It was brand new in the box. I mean, brand new in the box. When I took it out, you know what was in this bread bucket? A VHS tape of how to use the bread machine. This wasn't just a bread machine, it was a time capsule. And I have put it to good use since then, let me tell you. Now, you got a bread machine? Get out your recipe book because my bread machine may have a slightly different recipe for the rolls, but I'll tell you the tricks I use to make the bread machine recipe absolutely fantastic. Okay, so let's go ahead and make some bread machine rolls. What I'm going to do first is make dough with my bread machine. As long as your bread machine has a dough setting and it has a dough recipe for dinner rolls, you're in business. Okay, here's my bread machine bucket. You all seen one of these if you own a bread machine. And inside I've got this paddle inside of here. Now that, you got to make sure that is put down on here where it belongs, because before you start doing anything else, that's really important, step one, okay? And once you've done that, this by the way is my third bread machine. The first one, it didn't die, but the cord started separating away from the back of the machine and left some raw copper wiring sticking out, and I thought that's not very safe to use, so I had to retire it. The second one I bought at a thrift store for $7. And believe me, it's still running, but now it's starting to make some very strange noises. So I thought when I had a chance to get a brand new one, maybe I better grab it while I had the chance. So I did. Anyway, so bread machine bucket, paddle in place. Now, my recipe says to use 1 2/3 cups of water and 2 tablespoons of powdered milk. And I thought, yuck. You know, if you're doing that overnight and you're going to delay it and have fresh roll dough in the morning, and don't put milk in something you're leaving overnight to sit, okay? But I'm going to make this right away, so I'm going to just put 1 2/3 cups of milk, which is just under 400 grams, 400 milliliters, sorry, 400 milliliters of milk. Now, if you're an American, that still calls for a cup and 2/3. My bread machine has recipes for US and for Canadian because there's different kinds of flour. I'm just going to pour this right here into my bread machine bucket. It's cold from the refrigerator, and I don't care because my machine's going to sit here for 25 minutes and do nothing while it brings all the ingredients up to the optimal temperature for me. Now, I'm now going to add shortening, but you know what? Butter is better, and in rolls, butter is better, let me tell you. So, 2 tablespoons of butter are going in here, right into my machine, and that's cold from the refrigerator, and you know what? I don't care. Now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar. I have my sugar bowl in my kitchen, and this is a measuring spoon, so I'm just going to measure 1, 2. One of the things they tell you in the bread machine book is measure your ingredients into your bucket in the order given. That's important. So that's what I'm doing, measuring them right here into my bucket in order. Now it says 1 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now here's my 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt, just regular table salt. In that goes. Now is the difference in the recipe. In the US, the flour is softer, so therefore it says to use 4 1/2 cups of flour, whereas in Canada it's 4 1/3 cups because we have the harder durum wheat. If you live where you use bread flour, it says to use bread flour or in Canada you can use all-purpose flour. So you can either use bread machine flour or you can use all-purpose flour in Canada, but in the US use bread flour, hard flour. And in the UK and other places, you have to use wheat that comes from hard durum wheat, which would be called bread flour. Anyway, in goes my all-purpose flour. Because I live in Canada, I can just use my all-purpose flour, which also contributes to the fact that it only cost me $1.70 to make this bread because I didn't have to buy a special bread machine or bread flour. There we go. That's my 4 1/3 cups of flour that I measured out, and that's all just going right there in my bucket. And now, one final ingredient, which is yeast. Don't forget your yeast, for goodness sakes. You won't have bread dough when it comes out if you don't. So here's my yeast right here, all-purpose, my active dry yeast. And because I'm not using special bread machine yeast, which is a whole lot more expensive, I'm using regular yeast. I actually finally read the book and it says use extra yeast. Use an extra half a teaspoon or so of yeast when you're doing it, when you're just using regular active dry yeast. So that's 1.5 teaspoons going in there. And I'll add another, I always add a little bit just for luck. I always add a little bit extra just for luck. Anyway, there's all of my ingredients are now in my bucket. And there you go. Doesn't that look yummy? No. But that's okay. Now, the really tough part about this whole operation is going to happen right now. I'm going to pick up my bucket like so. I'm going to put it in my machine like so. I'm going to tilt it to the side. I'm going to follow the instructions in my book. I'm going to lock my bread bucket in place. I'm going to close my lid. Now, on my control panel, I'm going to look for bread type, and I'm going to go bump, 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 bump. When I get to dough past the setting, then I'm going to press start. 2 hours. That's it, done. I'll be back in 2 hours, and I'll take beautifully made, beautifully kneaded roll dough out of this machine in 2 hours. So now I'll just go off and do whatever I feel like for 2 hours until it's ready for me. Wasn't that hard? Wait till you see the beautiful rolls I get out of this. Now normally when I make them, I just kind of cut them up and eyeball how good they are, their size and so on. But today, since I'm taking these to our daughters tomorrow, we're having roast tenderloin of pork tomorrow at our daughter's house. I'm going to bring some bread rolls as a surprise because they love my bread rolls. So I'm going to measure them all up so they're even because there's my daughter, my son-in-law, his dad and brother, as well as my husband and I. So, I want to make sure they're all more equal in size. No fighting over the big rolls, boys. Anyway, I'll be back in 2 hours. And while I walk away, and the machine does all the work. Hello again, and I am back, and as you can see, 2 hours have elapsed, and all those ingredients that went into my bread machine have now made this lovely roll dough, all nicely risen. Now, I got rid of my bread machine. Well, I didn't get rid of it, I put it away, because its part in this recipe is done. So now, going to dump I just put a little flour on my board, and I'm going to dump my roll dough out here, right here on my board. My paddle stayed inside my bucket, so I'm going to pull that off. I'm just going to put it to soak with some soapy water, and I want to make sure to get all of that dough off of around the paddle. Don't want to leave any dirt on my bread machine thing. Now I'm just going to tilt down my camera so you can see this part. Because I'm taking these for company, I'm not going to try to eyeball my rolls and make sure they're all the same size. I'm going to weigh them. I'll just weigh out I put some saran wrap on here. So plastic wrap, I'm just going to weigh my dough. Do a little math here. Let's see. What do we got here for weight? Oops. Might help if I turn the scale on, wouldn't it? This whole thing weighs in at 1,205 grams, 1,205 grams, plus a little flour. 454 grams in a pound, so that would be 1.5 pounds, which is what size bread this makes, is 1.5 pounds loaf. That's what this machine makes. Okay, so I'm just going to tilt this camera down here, and then you can see my dough. All right, good. Now, baking the rolls. You can also use, you can make 5 mini loaves, these little mini loaves that are 5 inches by 3 inches by 2 inches deep, which are, let's see, 14.5 centimeters by 8 centimeters by 5 centimeters. 5 of those. You can put that in here and bake them and make little tiny mini loaves of bread. The recipe calls for 2 8-inch square pans, which is like 22.5 centimeters square. You can use 2 of these, but that's not what I like to make mine in. I have my own favorite pan, which is an 11-inch round stoneware pan. This one I don't have to grease. The other ones you have to grease. So this is seasoned, so I don't have to add any grease to it. And it's nice and thick. It keeps the heat. It browns my rolls nicely on the bottom. It's my favorite pan, and it does the whole batch in this one pan. This recipe says to cut this in 12 to 18 pieces. So I'm going to cut this into 16 pieces, and they're going to weigh 86 grams each. So I'm just going to start cutting off and weighing on my scale 86 grams pieces of dough. And then I'll have the right sizes here. That's only 70, 90. Well, this is going to take a little bit of time. But when I'm doing this, I'm just going to shape them like this. Take one, shape them like this. I just keep turning them around like this. I know you can't really see that because it was inside my hands, but I just keep making them into a little round ball like this with my hands. Just shape them. And then when I have a nice, and I try to push the dough in the bottom so I don't have a cavity or a seam under there. Just keep working your dough. This dough is pretty dry today. Sometimes it's a little wetter than this. And when it's wet like that, you need to add a little more flour to it. But today, don't need any extra flour, for sure. Okay. Now when your roll looks like that, I just pop them in here. Now I'm just going to keep ahead and do these, and I'll be back when I've got all 16 of them done. So I'll keep you. I won't make you watch me. I thought maybe I better show you more than one being shaped, so I'll do a few extras. I'll do a few here at the end. These weigh in at about 86 grams each by my scale, which is 3.1 ounces. So I've got 14 here I'm going to have from this batch, which says cut it into 12 to 18 pieces. I find that 16 is usually a good number to cut them into, because that gives you a good sized inner roll. But these are going to be a little bit bigger. When I get them all in my pan, I'll show you. See how I want to shape these so that they're kind of round, like a ball, roughly. I'm going to try and get rid of this from underneath it here, the seam underneath it here where I'm tucking under. And sometimes I'll just roll it on the countertop here and put some pressure on it to just kind of flatten that into the underneath side. And sometimes I'll just go like this. See how that disappears? Just like that. See that's, and now I'll just try to shape that into with my hands. I'll just cut my hand up like this, and then I'll just shape that so that it's like kind of like making a snowball. A bit like making a snowball. Yeah, there we go. So I just kind of tuck the outer part in and around. Just keep tucking it in. You don't have to be very delicate about this, because roll dough doesn't mind being handled. As long as you have clean hands, it doesn't matter. And you just kind of keep pushing it in until the outer part of it starts to look round. And then you just kind of pinch that at the bottom. Give it a good hard pinch in here to make that form more or less into the bottom. Then you want to rub it a bit on the counter like this. Just kind of push down on the counter like that, and kind of rock your hand back and forth, around and around like that, to make that seam disappear, be absorbed into the bread. And of course this one's going to be very difficult to do. It's going to give me a hard time. In my cookbook it says to brush this with a beaten egg and some water, but I never bother with that step. I find that they turn out just nicely, just as they are. And I just cover them up with a tea towel, and leave them for half an hour. No, yes, 30 minutes. Yes, 30 minutes for rising. And I'll just, when I'm finished shaping these all, I'll put them under a tea towel on the back of my stove, and I'll go away for half an hour, and then I'll come back, and then they go in the oven. Then 25 minutes later, hot rolls. Hot bakery rolls, nice as any you ever got in a bakery. So, this is the only part of work I have to do, or you have to do if you're making the rolls. It's just form them into the rolls, that's all. And that's not really a whole lot of work. Takes me maybe 10 or 15 minutes. There. Just kind of shape it so that it goes around like that. Get your buns shaped. Squeeze your hands together. It's a good exercise program working with red dough. Gives your arms and hands a workout. If that arthritis is trying to settle in on your hands, you just make some rolls. It helps work your fingers and work your wrists and helps keep that at bay. There. One thing you have to do for a lot of forms of arthritis is movement, and it hurts if you have it. I'm one of the lucky ones. I didn't get it. Not so far, and I don't think I'm going to now at my age. My sisters are not so fortunate. And my niece, one of my nieces, I know is definitely not so fortunate. They all are getting it, but I seem to have escaped it, for which I'm very grateful. It's not very pleasant stuff to live with, I can tell you. My mom had it, and she suffered with it every day. Never stopped her from doing the things she really wanted to do, and she felt she kept her hands moving, they wouldn't freeze up, and she was right about that. If you keep your hands moving, playing the piano or tatting or knitting or making bread, things that keep your hands moving will keep you from your arthritis from making your finger joints totally seize up. So they tell me. There we go. Last roll. And now I have my 14 rolls in a circle. I'll show you what those look like. See, right now, I'm going to put those, see there's space between them all, and that's a good thing. Now they have space to rise in a half an hour. They will have doubled in bulk, and this pan will be full of rolls. So I'll be back in a half an hour to show you what they look like after they've been sitting under a tea towel in a warm, draft-free place for half an hour. Hello again, and here I am, the final reveal before they go in the oven of my rolls after half an hour. So, ta-da! There you go. Now my rolls are filling the pan, and they're all ready to go in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 170 degrees Celsius, for 25 minutes. My recipe says 20 to 25. I find with my heavy pan it takes 25 minutes for sure to get this to heat through and cook my rolls properly. So I'm going to go put these in my preheated oven, and I'll be back in 25 minutes with fresh hot rolls out of the oven, ready to be turned out on my cooling racks. All right, I'll be back again. And here we are, the very finish of the recipe. Here are the rolls, nice and hot right out of the oven. Look at that, all golden brown and delicious looking. I'm just going to turn those out. Oops. Here are the golden brown delicious rolls, finished, all finished and on the cooling rack. I hope you will like this video and you will subscribe to my channel and watch again when I'm back again with another recipe from the bread machine on Ruby's Classic Cooking. Bye for now.